Good morning, everybody. It's been a little while since I made a video. Had some things on my mind that I wanted to talk about. One was a video I saw on Twitter, and one was a report I heard on NPR today. I think I'll start with the NPR report today. They were talking about the rise in reported antisemitism. I'm saying reported antisemitism because we can discuss, what's true, what's not, what's reported, what's not reported. And when they talk about things like graffiti and stuff like that in public schools, I went to public school. That's one of the main reasons I would never send my kids to public school, to regular public school. I would send to, Curious Joel public school, something like that, but not a regular Democrat-run public school, So, the issue with, they were talking about, the anti-Semitic graffiti and stuff in the public school near Boston. It's interesting, most of these stories and the other story I'm going to talk about also coming from the Boston area. The issues with when I was a kid, that stuff happened all the time. That was just normal. A lot of kids are curious. A lot of kids, it's not necessarily that these kids are like growing up in Nazi households. It's whatever it is. They don't know what they're really doing. They're curious. They're confused. They're ignorant. These types of things. And it was never a big deal, And nowadays, it's like it gets reported on NPR and the New York Times and stuff like that. The simple and obvious answer, if a Jewish kid feels uncomfortable being in public school, you don't belong in a public school. You belong in yeshiva. And the same thing, Catholic kids belong in Catholic schools, and Protestant kids belong in Christian Protestant schools, and Muslim kids belong in madrasas. The public school system is really one of the worst systems in America. It's not what the founders intended. It certainly was not meant to be compulsory throughout the country the way it is. These were issues that were always local issues, and some localities, even early on, did have public schools and some did not. But the public schools also taught morality, ethics, they taught history, they taught the Constitution, and nowadays they're teaching things that really have nothing to do with anything. And even the way they teach things that are important to teach, they don't teach. You'll have a whole avodah zarah made out of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, and leave out the fact that he was the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, that he was a pastor, that he was a religious man. And that he marched together with religious people of different faiths as well. He, a Baptist preacher, marching together with Catholic priests and nuns and with Jewish rabbis, and so forth. And also, the dark sides of things are not taught. They'll mention that he received, some of his influence from Gandhi, and Gandhi did a lot of great things, but Gandhi was also a very big racist, which the lesson of that is, more than anything, is that, we don't have to throw out the baby with the bathwater. Just because Gandhi was racist against the black Africans in South Africa, when he was a lawyer in South Africa, actually, it doesn't mean that we have to throw away Gandhi. Just the same thing. There are certain issues, perhaps even with the legacy of Dr. King, doesn't mean to throw him all away if, there were certain issues perhaps in his personal life. People are complicated people. There is this, ideology today of, throwing out the baby with the bathwater. Nowadays you can't, we have to totally divest ourselves from, various entertainers because they have skeletons in their closet and these types of things. This isn't really what I had in mind to talk about. But then there's other things that we have to talk about. The fact of the matter is, where is anti-Semitism really happening? Where are most of the reported anti-Semitism? Now, anti-Semitism is a difficult issue because the Zionist movement certainly likes to play it up. This is part of their playbook. This is something that Herzl was not really the founder of the Zionist movement, because the real founder of the Zionist movement, Nathan Birnbaum, became an ardent anti-Zionist after realizing the folly of his ways. And so people tend to say that Herzl was the founder of the Zionist movement because he remained a heretical Zionist throughout his life. His brief life at that. But Herzl said that the job of the Zionist would be to increase anti-Semitism in the world in order to attract Jews to join the Zionist movement, leave their countries in the diaspora, and come to wherever they decide to make a Jewish state. In the end, it wound up being in the Holy Land, unfortunately, defiling the Holy Land. So it's there's a lot to talk about. And we see right away what happened after Pittsburgh. The Zionists came, and with their pleas of saying, "Oh yeah, 11 Jews got killed in Pittsburgh. Let's go and move to a country where, over like 25,000 Jews have been killed in the past 70 years." That makes a lot of sense. It doesn't, but that's the way that that's the way the Zionists think. And it comes back to this real issue that I want to talk about, and also the ignorance. They were talking about how students need to be educated and so forth. Now, this is something they're never going to tell you in the public schools. But there was a story of someone in a theater yelling "Hail Hitler, Hail Trump." My belief is that it's most likely a Democrat looking to discredit Trump. If you probably look at it, which is probably the same story with this guy who was sending the bombs. He was very well known to be a supporter of both Obama and Clinton, and he was doing all these things just to make the Republicans look bad just before the election. But all this being said, it's totally ridiculous to put together "Hail Hitler, Hail Trump," except in the mind of a Democrat, in the imagination of the Democrats. I mean, everybody should watch the comments that the president made shortly after taking office, a few months in, at the Holocaust Museum. This is a very important video for a lot of people to watch. First and foremost, to show that this man is not a Nazi. I mean, it should go without saying that someone whose own daughter is Jewish is not a Nazi. I don't understand what kind of... And not only that she's his daughter, but unlike Netanyahu, who disowned his Orthodox child from a first wife, President Trump embraced his Orthodox Jewish daughter from a previous wife. It's not his current wife, and still he embraces her and counts her and her husband as advisors. So But there's more that has to be discussed, and the major issue is that Nazism is directly linked to the Democratic Party in America. Dinesh D'Souza brought this up, but really the ideology of the Democratic Party is much more of a fascistic and racialistic. Even today, it's not just a remnant to the past where they say, oh, they used to be the racists, now they're not. In the Republican mindset, being, the words Republican and Democrat are indicative of the ideologies. Democracy means pretty much mob rule, and that's why our founders did not want this country to be a democracy. They did not want populism, which is also essentially a Democrat ideology. It comes from, we know Andrew Jackson was very big into this. But then more than this is this idea of collectivism, that you are more valuable as a member of a group than as an individual. And the ideology of the Republican Party is that your value is as an individual. It doesn't matter what race you are or anything else. And so the collectivism of the Democratic Party is really what's the whole issue here. So so to this day, this is a major part of what the Democrat agenda is. It's putting everybody into categories: men, women, white, black, Asian, Hispanic, gay, straight, all these things. This is what the Democratic Party is all about, putting people into groups, whereas the Republican Party is about the individual. It doesn't matter what religion you are, what race you are. What matters is the value of each individual, no matter who or what the parts of their identity that are part of their freedom of association are. And so that's a major aspect of, what needs to be discussed here. And the truth is, like we said earlier, the Nazi Party learned their ideology from the Democrats. They learned their ideology that, they're going to judge people on racial ancestry. The KKK still is to this day part of the Democratic Party. The leaders of the KKK came out in support for Hillary Clinton. People don't know that because the media is hiding that. Although you can find it, if you do the right Google searches, you can find this. Because really, Hillary Clinton has very strong connections to this day to the KKK. Her mentor was Senator Byrd, who was a Grand Dragon of the KKK. That's what the Democratic Party not only was all about, but still is all about. And this is something that especially these children who think that they're being badasses, excuse my language, with the Nazi nonsense, they have to know the true history of the Nazi Party. Nazis are not Christians. Nazis are pagans. They are neo-pagans, like Odinists. Not saying that all Odinists are Nazis, but there is a large amount of white supremacy in the Odinist movements. And a lot of these things are really essentially left-wing. There's nothing right-wing about anti-Semitism. Certainly not as far as the American right is concerned. It's it's much different than people think. With that being said, I wanted to discuss another issue. There was a story recently of an imam at his khutbah, his weekly sermon in Boston. And in the video he said that America needs to be Muslim. and I didn't see the whole thing, but I saw what was posted on Twitter, and there's a lot of ignorance in what was there. When he says that America needs to be Muslim, he does not mean that people have to convert to Islam as a religion, because he was speaking about how a Native American chief worshiping the Great Spirit was Muslim. The word Muslim means submission to God, and that he was submitting to God. And so he wasn't saying that people should not be Christian or Jewish. At the end, he said to people who call themselves Muslim have to also submit to God. And I would say Muslim with a lowercase m. Just like Catholic is a word that means universal. These types of things. And so to be Catholic does not necessarily mean the Roman Church, and to be Muslim doesn't necessarily mean a follower of the teachings of Muhammad and the Quran. But then people assume, this means that they want everyone to follow their religion. And there are people in the Muslim community who do believe like that. But I don't think that's what this particular imam was saying. So these are just different things we can discuss. Based on, and again, people have to be educated. So thank you for watching. God bless. Please like, share, and subscribe, comment, and all the best.